Childers for the worship. I was very blessed by that. And also, thank you, Kathy, for that children's story. I have a deep respect for the talent to take complicated, deep biblical truths and then teach that in a way that is easily to understand, even among kids. So thank you for that lesson. I want to open today and ask a question. How are we doing resting? Are we truly entering into God's rest? I don't know about you, but I do not rest well. Often I find myself coming back to work on Monday morning thinking, where did that weekend go? That went way too quick. Vacations often go way too quick. And you come back to work that next day not feeling refreshed. And often vacations can be extremely stressful in themselves. So today we're going to talk about what it means to truly rest, and in particular what Sabbath means in the Bible, what it means to Sabbath. Now, Sabbath and rest, in our today's 2020 American culture, Sabbath seems to be foolishness. It seems to be like, why wouldn't you work? All successful people work. We'll rest when we're dead. It seems to be a lazy day where people just sleep. Or it's a day to watch football. And now that the football season's over, now what are we going to do? I think is a common view of the culture's view of Sabbath. The word Sabbath in Hebrew is literally Shabbat. Now that Shabbat is such a fun word to say, we have to say it together as a group. Shabbat. Shabbat, yes, means to cease or to rest. Literally to stop, to Sabbath. Now, we're going to turn to the very beginning of our Bible on page 2 of our Bible. It's page 2 in mine, Genesis 2, verses 1 through 3. Now, before we dive into discovering and investigating what true rest is in Sabbath, I must say right off the bat that whatever is talked about, I am not saying that we need to strictly obey, and especially legalistically obey. We need to have Sunday off work. The first generation of believers, of Jesus' followers, they worked on Sunday. Especially in a Jewish culture, the Jewish mindset was, that's a great day to start your work week on Sunday. But they did take Saturday off. So, in my opinion, if your job calls for you to work Sunday, in my opinion, I think that's okay, but it's highly advised to take another day of the week off and let that be a Sabbath rest for you. So with that said, we're going to dive into Genesis chapter 2. And we're actually going to start on verse 31 of chapter 1, leading right into chapter 2. And God saw everything that he had made, days 1 through 6, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Now, I'm sure you all have noticed at the end of days 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that little detail is found at the end of every day. There was evening and there was morning, whichever day. What, in our calendar, in our time, what marks the start of our day? What time marks the start of the day? 12 o'clock a.m., yeah, right in the middle of the night. That seems random to me. I guess one guy woke up in the middle of the night and said, yep, this is a good time to start a day. Seems random, but biblically, an Israelite mindset is that your day starts at your evening meal. Throughout your day, if you've made it to your evening meal, congratulations, you finished your workday, and now you've started your next day. I think that's just rich with significance and meaning, that the first thing that we do in our day is we stop, we cease, we rest, we sleep. and then after that rest, then we go about our day. I think that is highly related even to our relationship with Christ, that we do not do, we stop. We stop first and let Christ's work be enough for us. And then when we wake up to his work and find our new identity in him, then we go about our day working for his kingdom. That's so significant, the Hebrew day cycle. So verse 1 of chapter 2, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done. So why did God... these three verses are just so dense, cram-packed full of meaning and significance, and we're just going to scrape the top of the iceberg today with this. So it's talking about God resting. Why did he rest? Why did he rest? Because creation was now complete. I think the NIV and the New Living Translation has the word complete. A lot of other translations say finish. Because of the finished creation, God rested. Now it is when we talk and think about Sabbath and rest, it is so fundamentally important that we have an image of a finished, complete creation. And I think we could have a whole sermon series on that. I think a quick definition of what should come to mind when we think of a complete creation is a creation with right relationships, where man has a right relationship with God, but also right relationships with one another, with man, with humankind and one another. And also a right relationship with creation, a right relationship with working the ground and with animals. That we represent God's nature to creation, and then likewise we represent creation to our Creator. And we sum up creation's praises to our Creator. On the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. This is very important. Verse 3, so God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. What detail is not there at the end of verse 3 that we expect? And there was evening and there was morning, the seventh day. That little detail is not there. I think there's much to learn even from that. Theologians say that with that little detail not being there, it is implied that the sun never goes down, it never sets on God's rest, meaning that in the light, in the realization of a complete creation, God's rest is an eternal rest. It is a rest that is not meant to be confined to just verses 1, 2, and 3 of chapter 2. It is a rest that is meant to seep through, to bubble up, and burst into all other time, into my days 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, my work days. And that's so significant with God's eternal rest. Theologians also say that as the temple was the space, as temple was for space, so Sabbath is for time. So what that means is as the temple was the space for the micro-Eden of where God's presence dwelt with man with the intention of reaching to the ends of the earth. So Sabbath is the time of micro-Eden where we enter into that rest and taste and experience God's complete creation, and then we take that back to the rest of our 1 through 6 work days, and we let that Eden ideal flood into the rest of our time. I think Sabbath is meant to be viewed as a dress rehearsal. And for those of us who have participated in the musical, we know what dress rehearsal is. We put on our costumes, we have the set completed, we have the lighting, we even recorded our dress rehearsal, and we act out the real thing. And I think Sabbath is a time, our day of rest is a time to practice the ideal of new creation and completed creation, and with the intention of reaching the rest of our time. Now, a really neat story that still is so special to me, an experience that I've had with rest. Towards the end of the year 2015, I was still working at Halion. We just finished the year, and Halion landscaping, it is very tough work. It's a lot of work just to make it to the end of the day, to the end of the week, and then also especially to the end of the year once you reach winter. And we finally reached winter that year, and I was pretty exhausted. And I made the choice to take, I believe it was about 2 weeks rest, where I drove up to my family up in Lebanon, and for 2 weeks just to pray and think about life. I was at a pretty big crossroads in my life. And I remember throughout those 2 weeks, I went on several drives throughout the country with my dad. And they were drives not with any real special destination at the end. They were just to drive and to talk. And some of those drives have just the best time quality moments with family. And I remember one topic was we were talking about girls, and I think that's a good topic for fathers to have with sons. And I remember one thing that Dad said was, "John, you know what I think? I think you should discover more about who that Katie Petersheim is." And when Dad said that just made all the sense in the world to me. I'd never thought of that before. The light just kind of turned on to me. And then the year 2016 began. I started befriending Katie, and we dated each other. I attended court, and we married 2 years later. But just to think, what if I didn't stop or cease that winter? That's a time where finances get tight. I could have been dairy farming extra more and making money, but it is so important to stop, to rest, to cease, and to let God, let His work be enough for us. And it's hard to think what would have happened if I didn't stop for those 2 weeks. Never underestimate the potential of God's rest when we cease from our work. So with that said, all this may sound really good about entering into God's eternal rest and tasting the ideal of a complete creation, but what does that mean for me today? How is this applicable for me today? In busy America. I'm going to read this verbatim. I think this is very applicable for us today. Although we live in one of the wealthiest nations in the world, and many of us, even in this room, will never come anywhere close to experiencing true poverty that is felt throughout the world. We never seem to have enough money. We never seem to have enough work. And yet we ironically never have enough time to complete the work that we do have. I think, and I'm speaking first, and I've had those thoughts within myself, I need more money, I don't have enough time. I'm speaking to myself first and foremost through this. And there's something fundamentally wrong with how I rest in busy America. I think we need to, number one, say no to my work, to cease, to stop my work, and to say yes to the work of God's new creation. I think what that could look like is, yes, stopping from my work, but also saying no to even subtle work distractions that take me away from entering into God's rest. And it could be checking emails throughout my Sunday. It could be even answering phone calls if that is distracting me and taking me away from entering into God's rest. News, checking news. I think we all agree news is anything but restful today in our culture. Even if dishes just drain you, dishes can wait a day. If cooking is draining you, the crock pot invention can be very applicable here, where we prepare the food beforehand and rest on our day of rest. Now, if dishes is stress relieving for you, then wash all the dishes in your house. If chopping wood gives you energy, then chop a cord of firewood. Whatever is draining you, it's okay to stop that and say yes to God's complete creation. And what I think that could look like for us today is saying yes to family meals, having meals as a family, practicing hospitality. I think it could look like playing board games, having fun with our family, going on a hike to Swallow Falls with a loved one. It's taking a walk in the garden with those we love. And notice the pun is intended, walking in the garden, symbolically walking in the Eden ideal in the garden, entering into that rest. We rest at our best not when it is just convenient, when it is our leftover time, when we are safe, fed, and well provided for, but rather we best rest in inconvenience, when we even are in need, hunger, or even danger. The Jews during the Holocaust, even in the concentration death camps, they still practiced their day of rest in that midst of danger. So I do want to offer a word of caution with entering into Sabbath and observing Sabbath, that it can very quickly become a legalistic form of idolatry. And it could be even viewed as, oh, look what I did, look how I observe the Sabbath and stop my work. And I think that's what the Pharisees of Jesus' time, that they legalistically observed the Sabbath, which was idolatrous. Now, in Genesis 2, who rested? Who rested in Genesis 2, in the original Sabbath? It was God who rested. It was God who rested. Very often do we enter into my rest. How often do I enter into John Martin's rest rather than God's rest? And I think what that may look like is a self-centered rest, where I do have that attitude of, look what I do, look how I observe the Sabbath, and I turn a blind eye to those in need around me. That's entering into my rest, as opposed to entering into God's rest, which is all about putting my neighbor above myself, loving my neighbor, and fellowshipping with my neighbor. The Jews of Jesus' time really did not agree with how Jesus observed Sabbath, because they observed it idolatrously in a legalistic sense. But Jesus could not find a better time to heal people, restore sight to blind people, to heal a crippled man, to eat with tax collectors and sinners. No better time to do that than on the Sabbath. And that, I think, is what the Sabbath is all about, a time for healing and relationships with the Sabbath. Entering into God's rest looks like a dress rehearsal for the restored new creation. Now, as we close this morning, I want to read Matthew chapter 11. And this is Jesus, who is God, who rested in Genesis 2. Jesus said, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you
and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. So I want to ask us this morning, whose rest are we entering into as we observe the day of rest?